Welcome to Civics Mix. My name is Susan Haig, and I'm Creative Director of Civic Story. And with me today is Pastor Gladys Moore, who is in her 4th year as Senior Pastor of St. John's Lutheran Church in Summit. Pastor Moore has served congregations in Jersey City and Newark. She served on a college campus, and early in her career, she was an elementary school teacher. Welcome, Pastor Moore.
Thank you.
I would love to know, since we're talking about surprising twists and turns and life journeys, when did you first think about teaching? Was that in high school, or was it inspired by your parents?
I first thought about teaching when I was in college, actually. I had originally wanted to be a doctor, but there was a time in 10th grade biology with a frog that had been preserved in formaldehyde that convinced me that the medical profession was not quite calling me.
There you go.
And when I got to college, the idea of teaching history really appealed to me. But I ended up in elementary education because I like young children.
And it's so interesting how varied those grade levels are as far as the teaching skills. Which ones did you do, and which did you love, and why?
I started out in 5th grade because that was the vacancy in the school district.
Oh, okay.
And that was a great introduction to elementary education. The class was rambunctious. There were a lot of boys. And there was a good opportunity for some cultural sensitivity. So that was very helpful for me. My 2nd year of teaching, I taught 1st grade, and that was probably the most beloved age for me because I got to teach the children how to read. We could sing together, which I loved doing. I would take my guitar into class, and sometimes I would write songs with the children.
Great.
And then I taught 2nd grade for 3 years.
And where was it that you were teaching?
I taught in East Lansdowne, Pennsylvania, which is outside of Philadelphia. And I was there my entire 5-year teaching career.
And you mentioned that there was interesting group dynamics because these 5th graders all knew each other and you didn't know them.
Yes, brand new teacher. I was the only black teacher in the school.
Wow.
And these kids had been together since they were in kindergarten, so they knew each other exceedingly well, and I knew none of them.
And how long did it take to feel comfortable, or was it just a miracle on the first day?
One of the things I actually learned from this class is that by learning their names on the first day, I had a sense of power.
Right.
So that when I could look at a boy and say, "Charlie," he was surprised. And that skill has really stood me very well over these years in ministry, because one of the things I try and focus on is knowing people's names and who they are. And
so important.
Still get complimented today about that, although I have to say that as I age, that's slipping a little bit.
That's a great skill. When did the idea of theological study and divinity school come into focus? Was that while you were teaching or pre-existing?
It was while I was teaching, a strange turn of events. I would take my guitar to school and play with the kids, and I actually had siblings of 3 of my 5th graders in the 1st grade class. And when I taught 1st grade, one of my little 1st graders invited me to come to her church during Lent to sing.
Lovely.
So I went to this Lutheran church in town and met some wonderful people, enjoyed the Lutheran liturgy. So when I moved out to that community the following year, I got invited to participate in a 54-week witness and theological education course, and that inspired me, excited me, and at that point I really felt like God might be working to move me in a different direction.
Now, an MDiv is rigorous, I imagine. Scholarship, history, languages, text analysis, preaching, speaking. Did you love it all, or were there certain aspects that you really favored?
I did enjoy seminary greatly. In part, I loved it because this 54-week class, Word and Witness, had the professors who wrote that program. They were professors at the Lutheran Theological Seminary at Philadelphia, my alma mater. But I loved systematic theology. I took 4 semesters of Greek because learning the original languages was just powerful.
That sounds daunting, and you loved it.
It was great. Wow. So much of our language comes from Greek, Latin, that it was good to get that kind of foundation.
Now, was it an abrupt transition to college campus when you were at Mount Holyoke? How did that come about? I imagine you'd confront every issue of campus life there is.
Actually, my best friend from high school was the crew coach at Mount Holyoke College, and I went to visit her almost annually. It is one of the most beautiful college campuses on the East Coast. And I went to the Philadelphia High School for Girls, so I think the importance of single-gender education is really still vital for those who want to do it. And Mount Holyoke was the first of the 7 sisters. So between my friend Jean being there and an opening in campus ministry and something different in terms of a living environment and a working environment just called to me. So I thought, well, let me apply. It was a bit of a lark. So I was really delighted when I actually got the position, which was both pastoral and administrative, but more so, it really opened me up to the importance of multi-faith relationships and education, because presiding over the Office of Religious and Spiritual Life was one of the most significant things I've done. I worked with Muslims. We had a Jewish chaplain, a Roman Catholic chaplain, 2 Buddhist advisors. There was a pagan Wiccan collective. So I think in this diverse world, the importance of relating to and knowing about people who are different from us is critical.
And did you find a pretty vital spiritual life on campus, or did you have to kind of fight the sometimes rationalistic, modernistic things that can squelch that?
That's a great question. I think there was a dynamic spiritual life, not necessarily a religious life, although there was a significant religious life. I do believe that students are hungry for meaning and for ways to serve, and so being able to promote that. But we also did have, I'd say, fairly thriving interfaith religious community. Every Wednesday we would have an interfaith lunch, and I think there was never a Wednesday when there were less than 30 students, as well as some faculty and staff that came.
Fabulous.
So it was good.
Yeah, wonderful. So a theme of your life has been music. I didn't realize it started so early with string bass. I want to go right back to that decision. You could have played violin. What was that about?
No, not these hands. Actually, music started in the womb, I think. My mother was a wonderful singer, and from the time I was a kid, she was in the choir at John Wesley Amy Zion Church. So I sang as a child, loved choir music, and when I was 10, took lessons on the string bass. And that did it for me.
That
being
was grade
able
4,
to,
so 4th grade,
at 5,
fifth
I
grade?
was in 5th grade. I was able to join the All-City Orchestra in Philadelphia. And so every Saturday could take the subway down and make music during the summer with kids from all over the city of Philadelphia. And then we'd have this big concert at the end of the summer in the Civics Center. So the idea of coming together with people whom you don't know, who are playing different kinds of instruments. On the first day, it's an absolute mess. And by the end, you're making this beautiful sound with these other people, and it was such a glorious experience that did it for me. I picked up the trumpet when my
Yeah.
brother decided that he didn't want to play anymore.
And you didn't want to lug the bass around, or were you still lugging
Well, I
the
was
bass
still
around?
playing the
You just-
bass, but I was actually able to pick
Good
up
for
the
you.
trumpet pretty well on my
for
own,
you.
and then later on took lessons. And when I finally did decide that the bass was a bit too much, because I played the string bass, I was able to teach myself how to play the guitar. So
Same
my friend
strings.
Jean from Mount Holyoke gave me the first 4 chords, and after that I was off and running.
And I asked you to bring the guitar, but
You
not
did.
today.
I declined.
So here we are today in Summit with a vibrant community, an interfaith council, strong collaboration. Tell us what you'd like to see happen in Summit in the next few years.
I think Summit is a wonderful community, increasingly diverse community, and a community that really is committed, and this was a bit of a surprise to me. There's, I'd say, a significant amount of moving towards social justice here. When I discovered, for instance, that Family Promise had its roots in Summit, thanks to Karen Olson, that was really surprising to me.
A national organization.
National organization now, and St. John's was one of those early participants. Bridges, there's so many things here in terms of a group of people that really want to provide care and compassion for one another. So I'd like to see that continue to flourish. And I think in addition to providing support for people, really getting at the root causes of those things that keep people from thriving. I'd like to see our interfaith work, especially our dialogues on racial justice, continue. I think the ways in which we come together to talk about significant issues facing our planet, the environment,
Right.
Race, class, you name it. I'd like to see Summit continue to build on the work that's been done here in moving us towards being a beloved community where everybody can live in harmony.
Beautiful. And the spaces, creating those spaces for dialogue.
Yes.
They've been active and we can do more. Plus they're
Absolutely.
enjoyable. They're fun.
Yes.
So given all the circuitous nature of our lives, when young people say, I'm not sure what I'm going to do, I should know by now, what would you say? What would you suggest? What advice would you give to kids who are in junior high and worried about it, or high school, or maybe not worried about it, but just...
A few things. I would say follow your heart for one thing. And there are lots of different ways that one can be called. I started off thinking I wanted to be a doctor, and the formaldehyde frog led me to say, well, that's not really my life calling. And then I thought I'd be a musician, and there were things about that life that didn't appeal to me.
Too much
so
practicing.
my first vocation was as a teacher. That was wonderful. And while I was teaching, I felt like perhaps some kind of call to a church vocation was there. So I'd say be open to the possibilities that during your life you may be called to a number of things, and it's okay. But the call part, in terms of following your heart, is really important. Listen to what your spirit is telling you, and don't be afraid to take risks, and have fun along the way.
And keep laughing.
Enjoy what you're doing. I
Yes.
think that's one of the most important things. Enjoy it. Don't feel pressured to do it. Love doing it.
This has been a pleasure. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, and we'll see you soon.
You're welcome. Great to be here.
Take care.
Hey, you.
Yeah, you. Getting that college education?
What are you gonna do? Graduate and take some office job?
Be like everybody else.
Or will you dare do something different?
Like, be a teacher. You could be my teacher.
You got the skills.
The smarts? Yes, you.
You could be the teacher I never forget.
That'd be cool.
Does that corporate job even have recess?
What are you gonna make of yourself?
What are you gonna make of me?
Welcome back to Civics Mix. With us now is Ted Tolles, who is a science coach right here in Summit, working with about 70 students at once. That's amazing. We want to hear about that.
A week.
A week.
Right.
Okay, not
Right.
not all at once.
Right.
So you went to Summit High School, Ted. What were your passions at that point?
I did, and I really thank Summit High School for preparing me for what I've been able to do since. You know, I was in theater and playing soccer, and I was a science and a math guy.
Science and
actually.
math.
Yep.
A little bit of English, maybe.
Yeah, I think they currently have an award to the Aileen Johnson Chemistry Award.
Wow.
And she
Wow.
was, I can remember spending Saturday mornings at the high school with Miss Johnson.
Hard-
She was a real light for many of us.
Hardcore.
Yeah.
So you went to Princeton University,
Yep.
and you decided to major in biochemistry because they said, this is a new department, please major in us. What
Yep.
was that about?
Yep, really interested in science, and at the time when the chemistry of life tools were becoming available, and so they created a new department. I said, that sounds like pretty good, it's a direction I want to go. And I did pursue that and got my degree in biochemistry. Had a thesis project as a senior, which was a lab-based year-long research project. And that confirmed for me, I love knowing about science, but the actual day-to-day working in a biochemistry lab was not probably the next step for me.
Glad not for you.
Which meant I graduated college without a job or a next step, which not unlike many kids today who
So
are coming out of
what
college
happens?
and what do I do?
Right.
Right.
So what did you do at that point? You thought of medical school, a little pivot away from medical school, so where do you go?
Come home, buy a suit from Roots, ride the Lackawanna Railway, which is what it was called at that point in New York City,
Right.
and look for a job. And I was fortunate to find a really good job in a credit training program at Chase Manhattan Bank that taught me. I was a science background, didn't really have a business
Right.
background, but they took me through a great program of analyzing companies and getting behind the numbers.
Wonderful.
And so I was a credit officer for a number of years with Chase Manhattan in New York City.
Now, did you think this was going to be your whole life, or were you beginning to plan, okay, what's the next phase here? First of all, what did you like about it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was in my early 20s. I was in New York City, you
Wow,
know. I liked
exciting.
that,
Yeah,
sure.
sure.
And what I did like about it was learning a whole new dimension of life and the world and commerce, and how to understand a business. And some of my clients actually were in the education or the theater business. And so over the years, I thought, you know, I'm really interested in those particular businesses, and I'd like to actually pursue that. That required that so I had to then retool myself. And so I got an MBA, and coming out of that, did actually go into educational publishing.
Now, tell us about educational publishing. You're dealing with books, but you're enhancing books. What did that involve?
Well, we've got to remember we're in about 1980,
Right.
okay,
No
and
computers yet.
the textbook was King and Queen, and it is to this day a really useful device, but it's also a time, there was a program called The Voyage of the Mimi that came out on PBS, and Bank Street College designed it and published it, but they also built these technology pieces that allowed kids to have kinesthetic and visual and auditory participation in the science process. And the pieces that went with the book really spoke to me. They allowed us to exploit new technologies, to do things that books can't do, and the package there was a true synergy. The pieces were better than the whole was better than the individual pieces.
Right.
So that led me to move into the educational technology field.
So you were with big publishers, Prentice Hall and all those names we remember from textbooks.
Holt, Reinhardt, and Winston,
Yeah.
sure, Harcourt Brace.
Did you like the product development? Did you like dealing with people? Did you like the theatrics? Did you bring in your theater background? What was it about the work that?
Well, you know, that's where a theme, somebody once said, you know, think big, start where you can,
Right,
okay, and
right.
scale quickly.
Right.
And that has stuck with me, actually. So I started where I could, which was in the financial planning and the things that an MBA would tend to be hired into. But I was really intrigued by product development and how these technologies could be used in school to enhance educational outcomes. So though I was in a book company, I got into the ground floor of building these technology ancillaries, they were called at that point.
So somehow, in addition to all your interior hours of working in offices, you also became a big advocate of biking. So I want to just flip to the outside world.
Okay.
Did that happen early on? You eventually moved to Summit. You raised a family here, you and Ruth. Was biking and getting the city to bike something that was already in the game?
Well, pretty much just enjoying, particularly in the case of Summit. It's such a beautiful city, and nothing is more than 2 or 3 miles away from us. So I do it primarily just to be out, physically active, and much closer and in touch with our city. Plus, I don't need a parking space.
And you have a slogan about it. What's your slogan about the order of priorities?
Well, when I think about where I'm going to go, I try to walk first, bike second, and drive only if I have to.
Now, if all of us did that, we would have a different gauge of streets. The sidewalks would be wider, the streets would be narrower, right?
Yep, perhaps, and certainly there are limits. It depends on what our schedules are, but that's what's nice about Summit being so self-contained. We're more able to do that here than we can in a lot of other communities.
Now, your work experience also got you working on long processes and navigating how do you create change. You worked quite a while on having a recreational bike route in Summit. What did that involve? I mean, it's just sometimes you have to be the leader, and I think you were.
It starts with a passion, right, and a desire, as I've explained, to do it, and the realization that in order, sometimes we need to create a path for folks to follow. So the idea was to identify fun routes around Summit, and we've actually resurrected that, and there are a couple of us who are starting to build some maps that I think folks in town will see shortly, that will just be a way to move around Summit with liner notes, interesting Summit in the 1850s, the art installations of Summit, the green spaces of Summit, and it will connect the dots on safe, easy ways to get there, but with information that will make the route of interest. So when folks come to visit and you're wondering, what are we going to do with my sister Susan? Let's go out and have a walk or take a bike ride and enjoy Summit.
Excellent, because the word is out that the bike plan is really gearing up, as they say, so it's good to know.
Let's hope.
So now we'll jump back to you're working in New York, and somehow a pivot happens to science coaching. And can you tell us how that happened and what that involves?
The educational technology intrigues me, and I got fired.
Nothing like a good little pivot.
There was a corporate reorganization, and I went with it, which was a real opportunity
Creative
to
moments.
look for, and I found, obviously that's not a pleasant moment, but once I licked my wounds for 2 days and started to brush myself off, I really enjoyed the process of trying to identify where can I go that's more aligned. Right? When you leave an organization, there's been a disconnect for a while. And so this gave me an opportunity to see if I couldn't find a better fit. And so I looked the educational technology route, and there was laser video discs. This was a technology that was dead before today's students even were born, but it really had unique advantages, and that led to the CD-ROM, and that led to interactive video, and the Apple II computer came out. So there were 20 years of my working with educational technology startups. And my interest in science and in youth and in educational outcomes, I positioned myself to do product development and then actually a lot of sales and training in schools to help them understand how to take advantage of these tools. So the science is the theme, and again, trying to follow your passion wherever it may lead. 5 years ago, it was the educational startup I was with didn't work out. So it was time to find it again. And I decided I would start working with students one night, on Sunday night, for 3 hours. And they kept coming back. So I did it 3 nights. And we all kept coming back. And so 4 years ago, I decided I'm going to do this full time. And it's the most affirming work that I've ever done, to be helping kids who want to do their best work. And together we're trying to figure out how to navigate the the sirens of time and
Right.
curriculum, but working together, it's really fun to pursue biology, chemistry, and physics together.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, how do you have to do a lot of homework yourself. You have to stay right ahead of all those curricula. What's that like?
Absolutely.
Homework during the day and then coaching at night.
It's a little scary at first, but and challenging, but it's so affirming when you actually do learn things and you're able to communicate and help someone else figure it out.
Right.
I had a session last night in BC Physics that did require preparation on my part, but I'm really glad.
Yeah.
You know, that's part of the joy of its work, that I still put time into when I'm not quote working
Sure.
to prepare for it. And the kids of Summit High are just amazing. They
That's
really
great.
are. Both those who are on the accelerated track and those kids who may be struggling to accomplish their goals of a B. All of those sessions are really worthwhile because we're working together
Sure.
to try to help them do their very best work.
Sure.
So it brings together, you know, my love of Summit and my understanding of science and curriculum.
So since you were in science back in the day, are you amazed at how much they have to know now, or is it just kind of a different kind of knowledge and it was hard back then and hard now?
And that's why I have to prepare when I work with students today, because they're learning in high school what we learned in college.
Wow.
So literally,
Amazing.
even without AP courses,
Yeah.
the curriculum of general education
Yeah.
is accelerated.
Much more difficult.
Yeah. So, but that's the fun of it. We're always lifelong learners.
So I understand that even with all your work on technology, when you go off to your family's cabin in the woods, you all unplug. No devices. Is that true? And was it hard on your kids? And how did you develop that little family practice?
Well, I guess I would say unplug from the day-to-day transactions. No, I wouldn't say we unplug from technology.
Okay, you still have some stuff.
Sure, sure. But when we're together, we don't have the need to be, you know, we're focused more being together and playing outdoors.
Right.
But you know, we definitely we have a family chat. You know, on our text, everybody's in different places now,
okay.
but that technology actually does keep us together, because we just have a conversation among the six of us that you know is free and safe.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
it's really fun to do that.
So kids in middle school, kids in high school are kind of trying to figure out what their one life A to B path would be. What would you say in closing? Just what advice would you give for kids who might not have any idea? That's okay, you improv, just what are some thoughts you'd share?
Truly find your passion, spend some time to identify what it is, and then follow it. Don't worry about whether the economics of that, because the non-financial benefits of doing work you love are more than what you may get otherwise. But I think it has to start with spend the time to actually identify what that is, and then ask for help. Network with people who are in the field that you're interested in, and have lots of conversations. Just ask people to help you, because they will love to do that.
And everyone has gifts to offer. Everybody can be of help to others. So
You bet.
thinking how to be how to meet needs and how to serve really boils down.
Those who may help us are enjoying doing that, you know, so don't hesitate to ask.
Right.
Folks can always say no.
Right. Well, it's been inspiring to hear how you've moved from one chapter to another, reinvented yourself many times, and really been creative about it and kind of joyful about it. So those moments, as you say, they can be a shock, and then they can turn out to be something fun and a blessing. So.
Well, and I thank Summit High School for the variety of experiences that I got, which really are the bedrock of all of this. And
Right.
that's why it's so fun for me to loop back, to be able to give back to the school community and to the students, and sort of walk that path again for myself.
It's great. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ted, and all the best in your continued coaching.
Thanks very much, Susan.
And thanks for joining Civics Mix.